wow! I mean, just wow! What happened there? Find out in a few minutes. Roll titles. Hi YouTube, Brad James, I'm Micro Four Thirds guy with you once again. Yes, in my car, because I got a comment the other day asking, well, having a go about the fact that I'm in my car. This car is brilliant. I enjoy doing videos in the car because it's peaceful, it's quiet. I don't have people messing around and dogs barking in the background like I do at home. And I spend a lot of time in my car, so I do videos in my car. Don't like it? Change channel. However, for those of you who don't seem to be bothered by me doing videos in my car, welcome. Well, I put out a video last week and wow, what a response. I got thousands of comments on it. Well, hundreds of comments on it. I don't get thousands of comments on anything, but I got hundreds of comments on it. All about being accosted when doing photography in the street by strange people. And I was quite shocked as to how big this problem is. Now, there's a few things came out of it, and you know, as we go through, you'll find that probably a lot of these will ring true for you. The first thing is that almost everybody said that this wasn't something which happened a good few years ago. You know, in the days of film photography, we didn't really have anybody question us about whether we were taking photographs or not, and that's something which I had really not taken into account properly. This is a very new phenomenon, and it does seem to be, and borne out by an awful lot of the comments, something which has came in with the internet revolution, and especially when you get smart cameras with phones on them. Now, it does seem rather ironic, and a lot of what I'm going to be saying here aren't even my comments. These are comments which people have put out in the comments to my last video, and if you want to see it, there's a link up there. It's really worth watching because I started off quite a discussion on it. It does seem that if you take a mobile phone out, you're going to be less bothered by people accosting you, telling you that you can't take their picture and you're not allowed to do that. But it does happen. There was a few people who did say that even with mobile phones they're getting that, and it does seem rather strange that a mobile phone is a lot more of a discreet device, shall we say, a lot less obvious. So I would have thought that would have been more suspicious than less. And also, of course, with mobile phones, we can do things that we can't do on normal cameras. Mobile phones have the ability to live stream photographs or videos straight out onto social media on various platforms, where whoever's in the street having the photograph taken would never know how wide that is spread. Yet we take photographs on here in our cameras, and we have to do things with them. We can't just stream them up very easily. It's almost impossible to do that. We have to take them off the camera and put them onto social media in some way, shape or form, whether it's internal by transferring them onto an iPad or a computer, or whether we manage to actually have a Wi-Fi connection we can stream it onto. But it is difficult. Sorry, I've just been eating things. But it's very difficult to do that. So you would think that an iPhone or a mobile phone, a smartphone, would be a lot worse for people, but it's not. They seem to see a normal camera as being a lot more intrusive, which I can't understand. Of course, we also have the other thing of different laws in different areas. Now, I'm in the UK, and there's a lot of my viewers in the US. Now, you have your American, the Constitution, especially the First Amendment of the Constitution. In the UK, we have quite a few rights, including the Human Rights Act, and that allows us free speech and freedom to do basically what we want to do within reasonable bounds in a public area. We're allowed free expression under that act, although it doesn't seem to necessarily follow that. We have so many restrictive laws. In fact, at the moment, it's actually election day today for the general election in the UK, and I have got no belief that our elected officials, our MPs, our councillors, our people in government at local or national level I have no belief in them that they have any interest in allowing us freedom. I think the freedoms that we have, we're having to fight to retain. And that's not party political, that's across the board. So I'm very worried about our freedoms. And we have some of the most restrictive freedom laws in the UK when it comes to free speech. It's unbelievable. People think we're a very free country. We're not. So when it comes down to taking photographs in public, we should have the ability to have freedom of expression in that respect. And in fact, the UK, unlike a lot of European countries, the law basically says, unless there is a law prohibiting something, we have the right to do it. So under common law, we have the right to do an awful lot of things when it comes to free speech and free expression. And unless there is a law prohibiting us from doing something specifically, it's accepted that you can do what you please under common law. Obviously, that doesn't allow you to do serious crime. That's a different thing. But insofar as freedom of expression, we should have that under common law. We don't. It's being restricted more and more all the time. And there are more and more laws coming in. Now, I know in Europe, a lot of laws are not by exception like we have in the UK, but you have to have a law which allows you to do something. There's an awful lot of European countries, in fact countries around the world, but certainly in Europe, where to do something you need to be granted permission to do it. In the UK it's the opposite. We are governed by exception. So we can do anything we want except when we are told not to. So that should, in theory, give us the ability to take photographs almost anywhere. We have issues about private land, and I saw a few things come up on that. Again, there is no laws to stop you taking photographs on private land. There are restrictions which can come in insofar as certain Crown properties, Ministry of Defence establishments and things like that, nuclear establishments, all those sort of things. They can actually stop you from doing it. And by the way, anything I'm saying here is not legal opinion. This is our legal advice. This is purely my opinion reading through things. So please don't take it as gospel. I'm not advising anybody to do anything on this one. This is my observations which suit my brain. But in general, if we take a photograph from a public area, and that's an area open to the public, and I'll come back to that in a second, but from a public area, we can photograph anything we can see. So if we can see into a private area, we can photograph that. And also, there is no expectation of privacy in public. So if someone is walking down the street, in theory, we can take photographs of them. There are other laws coming, so if you stick a camera in the face, if you start following people needlessly throughout the streets, that becomes into harassment and other things, even into common assault. So yes, if you are going to those extremes, that is different. But insofar as taking photographs of people on the street, there is no expectation of privacy in public. And that goes for photography as well as videography. The other thing is, as well, as I say, there aren't actually specific laws to stop you taking photographs on private land, although the landowner does have the ability to control what goes on their land. However, we have various laws which define what public access land is. And a piece of private land can be publicly accessible. And if it's publicly accessible, then we have different restrictions which go on to that. Yes, if you're going onto somebody's land, it could be trespass. Now again, trespass is different in various different countries. In America, it's illegal. In the UK, generally, trespass is a civil offence. Although there are various forms of trespass, aggravated trespass or whatever, which stop it from being a civil offence and take it into a criminal offence. However, in general, if you've got somewhere which is defined as a publicly accessible area, even though it's privately owned, you can still enter that area and you can still take photographs. It's as simple as that. So if you've got, for instance, an industrial estate where there's no barriers up, there are no signs which say no public admittance beyond this point, there is nothing to indicate that you are restricted from there, then you can go onto it. You can't open closed gates, you can't open closed barriers, but also if there's a gap in a barrier, for instance, if you have a barrier across a road, but there is an opening for a side gate for pedestrians to go through and that's open, then you can go onto that. Again, I'm not giving legal advice here, so please be careful on that. But it does mean that when you get things like access roads to, say, an industrial estate, you can go down that access road. And there's also public roads which you can go on, all sorts of things like that. The paths are classed as part of the highway. So each of these areas we can go onto and take photographs. And if we can go onto it as a public area, we can take photographs of anything we can see. The issues that we started getting on some of the other ones was about, some of the other things was about people's reaction though, where most people don't actually know what the laws are, and they make up laws. So they'll tell you it's against the law to do this, when it's not. There's an awful lot what I call the Day-Glow Jacket Brigade, who come out and try and enforce laws which don't exist because they are empowered with their security rights. Well, it doesn't mean to say that they are actually within their rights to do that. Although people can actually question as to why you're taking photographs. But questioning, if that questioning becomes aggressive and you are threatened, it becomes an assault. And from that, we shouldn't be having to be assaulted to take photographs. I do believe some photographers, especially the auditors, do go out their way to provoke. And I'm very much into this thing of trying to, if you do get a situation, rather than push hard, I'm very much in the idea of de-escalating. Sometimes it's worth just putting your camera back in the bag and saying, I'll come back another day. We're not always allowed to do that. And also, we're not always in a position to do that. If we've been waiting for a shot and the weather's been lousy for days, and this is the one day where the weather breaks, and we want to actually take that shot, then it's maybe worth pushing for our rights. But a lot of the time it's not worth it. And to tell you the truth, I think an awful lot of us, rather than getting into a physical situation where somebody tries assaulting you for it, it's damn sight easier to put your camera back in your bag and walk off and live to fight another day, so to speak. I'm not saying that you should fight, but, lose the battle to win the war is a term that I used to hear an awful lot. So we've got all sorts of issues like that. But I was really amazed at how this has gone in almost every country where it's changed insofar as the last 2 decades. There are a few places which seem to be more open to photographers, whether you're in a big city or whether you're in a tourist area compared to anywhere else. But I've even seen this in the middle of the countryside where there's nobody around for miles, and one person just decides, there might be half a dozen people within a mile, but that one of those people will come up and challenge the photographer. The one that really gets me, there was a comment made which really upset me as I was reading it, and have a look at the comments below the previous video because you'll be able to see it. But somebody who is a professional photographer, had done news photography and all sorts of things, who had years ago taken photographs of people on the beach where it was kids and teenagers and things on the beach, and they were paid by the newspapers to quite happily print these because they showed people in holiday mode. Quite often they would get names, and those names would go in the paper against the photographs, and people would actually contact the photographs to buy copies of the print. They were so pleased to see their kids in print on the newspaper that they would actually be very happy and order copies. And eventually it got just to the point of putting down a Christian name rather than a surname in the thing of child protection, to the point now where that person, if they take photographs of anyone like that, even if they're not taking children in it, they're being called a paedophile. And what's worse is, in this particular one that I'm thinking of, they'd been reported to the police as a paedophile, which they weren't, but then their name had been spread all over social media, trial without jury, trial by the populace. Their name had been put on social media as being some sort of pervert. And that really worries me, because all we're doing is taking a camera out and capturing what we can see with our eyes. And the actual thing of putting the photograph out somewhere in public, to me, actually would lessen that, because by that photograph being put in the public domain, then it's too traceable back to you. If I was taking photographs for perverted reasons, I wouldn't want the general public being able to trace it back to me. So when I take photographs and put it in public domain, I put my name against it. I don't hide behind a pseudonym. I don't hide behind anything else. I'll put my photograph out. I'll put my details in the copyright part of it, because I'm happy with my photograph. And that really is what shocked me. That was probably the worst example I saw in the comments, but there were hundreds of comments from all over the world. So I've really opened up a little bit of a can of worms on that. And thank you to all the people who responded with comments. I sat with my jaw dropping more and more as I was reading through them, and I've read as many as I possibly could, but my jaw was just dropping ever so much every time I read a new comment as to the absurdity of some of these things. My final one is what I call the Karens. There seems to be a breed of the Karens in the world, and it's the Karens is a bit of a disrespectful term for these people who do unfortunately tend to be more women than men in these situations. Men have a different approach, but the self-righteous woman who has a right for everything and actually thinks they can get away with being a little bit more violent, because in the hope that being a woman, they're not going to get attacked back by the photographer. And I've seen a few videos recently where that's been the case, and it's backfired on them because the photographer hasn't accepted being attacked by them. But a lot of these seem to have a real ferocity, ferocity in how they deal with things. So again, if there's any more comments that you'd like to make of what I've said today, please put them in the comments box below. I'm really interested. Once more, I stress I am not giving legal opinion as to what you should or shouldn't do. This is purely an opinion which I've formed from my goings on. I may be wrong on the law myself, so I'm not I'm not claiming to be correct on these things, although I have done a lot of research to make my stand on these things. There are restrictions insofar as trespassing in the UK, which came in a year or so back. There were changes to the Official Secrets Act in the UK as to what you can and can't photograph and from where, which came in a year or two back. So these laws are evolving and they are changing our rights. But as a general rule, you can take photographs almost anywhere from public. There are some other caveats as well, though. If you're taking photographs of people's dwellings, the place they live, their homes, as opposed to their businesses or offices, there are other privacy issues which come into that. And there's also things, we'll talk about GDPR, the General Data Protection Register, which does data protection in the UK. It's said by a few people online that as individuals we are not covered by GDPR. We don't have to worry about that. Effectively, when we are taking photographs, we are creating a journal of what we see. So we are technically citizen journalists. It's a bit of a, I don't like the term citizen journalist, but we are technically citizen journalists. And people say, well, you're not covered. You're doing a news, or you're capturing it for art or whatever like that. You don't come under the GDPR. Well, we don't generally, but there are restrictions. Have a look at a guy called the Black Belt Barrister. I'll try to remember to put a link into this one to his channel. So he's covered this quite a lot. There are times when, even as an individual photographer doing reportage, that we do still come under data protection restrictions. So it is worth being very wary of what's there. As I say, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a solicitor. I don't know the overall laws, especially for the UK, but especially not elsewhere. So check in your own country what's legal there. But I think maybe it's time we evaluate what we do and how we get around it. Say my idea is de-escalate as much as possible. But sometimes you do have to stand your ground. And how you do that is very much down to you, the photographer, as to the outcome that you're going to achieve. It's easy to walk away sometimes. However, that's my finishing off to this. This is the follow-up to that last video. I hope you found it useful. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'd like to thank all these people who are my wonderful Patreon patrons for supporting the channel. There's a link below if you would like to become a patron, and there's also a link below if you don't want to be committed to something but just want to buy me a one-off cup of coffee to help support the channel. It'd be gratefully accepted. So thank you. There's a link, a PayPal link below for that. And don't forget, give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you would. And welcome to all the new subscribers after that last video. Because the thumbs up and the subscription, although it costs you nothing to do and commits you to nothing, it does make a huge difference in YouTube's algorithms as to how these videos are seen. So once again, from my car, because I'm always in my car and I enjoy talking in my car, keep on taking your camera out. I will, after a lot of people have encouraged me, keep on taking my camera out, and I'm going to keep on having fun with it. I hope you do too. See you soon. Bye-bye.